PTEN, Hamartoma tumor syndrome, PHTS, often shortened to PTEN, is a rare genetic condition. It's thought to affect about 200 to 300 people in the UK, although a number of patients identified about 150 as of July 2017. It's caused by an alteration of the genetic code of a gene called PTEN. This is an abbreviation of its full name. Wish me luck. Phosphatase and tensin homolog. Phosphatase and tensin homolog. Alterations are sometimes passed down from parent to child, and sometimes the alteration is spontaneous. Sometimes referred to by its older classification Cowden syndrome, CS, or Banyan-Riley-Ruvalcaba syndrome, BRRS. These syndromes, collection of symptoms, were first identified in the years before the development of genetic testing. Following the discovery that these different conditions were caused by the same gene. Hello, Gabe, welcome back! I just got back myself. I just went and had lunch. Now we're reading about PTEN. These syndromes, collection of symptoms, were first identified the years before the development of genetic testing. Following the discovery that these different conditions were caused by the same gene, they were amalgamated under the one name, PHTS, or PTEN, Hamartoma tumor syndrome. There's a wide range of symptoms associated with the condition, which can vary considerably in severity. When recognized in children, it can account for issues such as big head, macrocephaly, developmental delay, and autism. There is an increased risk of certain types of cancer in adults. People with this condition may have other problems affecting their skin, including unusual pigmentation and wart-like lesions. Some people have fatty lumps called lipomas or overgrowth of blood vessels. Arteriovenous malformations. If you're waiting for a diagnosis, are newly diagnosed, or just have suspicions, please take a look at our new to PHTS page. More detailed information can be found on our On Diagnosis page. There is no current treatment or cure. Wow. Patients are managed according to their symptoms. Doctors will discuss appropriate cancer surveillance for each person. Damn. Well, let's take a look at the blogs. And there's a patient story here. PTN patient story, Yvonne. Well, that's a depressing thing to come back to. Yeah, well, I mean, you can look at it that way, or you can kind of... I mean, it's definitely depressing, but I think it's better to be kind of hopeful and kind of err on the side that talking about things like this and bringing more attention to them will help bring more attention to it and hopefully get more people funding research so that we can find a treatment or a cure for this. But it does definitely suck that there's no treatment or cure for this condition other than treating the symptoms as they come. But let's read a patient story here. Awareness. Yes, indeed, Jeremy. Yes, thank you. Okay. At our patient day on 24th of November 2018, Yvonne kindly told her inspiring and insightful PTEN story. I wonder if there's a recording of this, maybe. Looks like they only have the transcript here. That's okay. I'll read it out loud. Gotta boost that perception as high as possible. I think I know what you meant. Indeed. Okay. Hello everyone, it's a pleasure to be here today and to share our patient story with you all. My name is Yvonne, and if you can't tell already from the strange accent, I've traveled from Glasgow in Scotland with my husband Martin and two of our three boys, Hayden and Evan. Our son Hayden, who is 7 years old, was diagnosed with BRRS, which is one of the branches, if you like, of PTEN HTS. He was diagnosed about 4 years ago when he was about 3, I believe, just before he started nursery. As you may already know, along with several other things, some of the common features of BRRS may include macrocephaly, large head, large birth weight, developmental delay, and intellectual disability, and other things in addition to this, but not always all of those things. It was Hayden's birth weight and large head size that first prompted our health visitor to ask our GP for referral to genetics. So, it seems like this condition is congenital, so you're born with it. It's not something that you develop over time, unless I'm mistaken. But from what I've read so far, it seems to be something that you're only born with, since it's genetic. Excuse me. Hayden was born in July 2011, weighing 11 pounds, 13 ounces, 13 ounces after a pretty traumatic birth for us both in an emergency delivery due to his weight and head size. No one, including myself, was immediately concerned about Hayden, and we all just put him down to a larger than normal baby, apart from being unable to hold his head up on his own when he should have been able to. He met all of his developmental milestones on time. However, he continued to grow off the chart. We were referred to genetics by our health visitor, who was the only one with concerns, who we thought was overreacting. Our genetics doctor ordered blood tests and investigated, etc., and soon after we received the diagnosis of BRRS, PTEN syndrome. I'm not going to lie, receiving that call was like being punched in the stomach. I was in shock and extremely upset. I didn't have a clue what this disease was or what it meant for my boy. The only thing I took from the conversation was the C word, that I had or would soon have a very sick son. Thankfully, that's obviously not the case, and I'm a bit better informed now that I was immediately after the call, but diagnosis was an extremely scary time, and if you're anything like me, the first thing you'll do is run off to the internet, which, let's be honest, is as useful as it can be. In some situations, it's not always a helpful tool. From what I remember, the only information I could find on BRRS and PTEN syndrome were all the doom and gloom. Maybe it wasn't, but frantically searching the net, that's all I took from it. So thank goodness for the days like this network of PTEN patients where we can gather together and share up-to-date information, positive stories, and just get support when we need it. After Hayden's diagnosis, my husband and myself and two boys, and my other two boys, were tested for a mutation of the PTEN gene, but all of our tests came back negative, meaning that Hayden's mutation was completely sporadic and wasn't hereditary. Which I think was a surprise to the genetics doctor, as she pretty much convinced us that it was highly likely that Martin or myself could be the carrier. So apart from the physical things Hayden has associated with PTEN, his macrocephaly, large head, being taller for his age, Hayden was also diagnosed with having autism just before he started school age 5. However, we feel extremely lucky that although he is autistic, and sometimes that is obvious in the way he interacts with others and the way he is socially, we feel blessed that so far he attends mainstream school and is very much on par with his peers and education-wise. In fact, he is in the top reading group in his class, and last year was so far ahead of his classmates, they sent him to another teacher for his reading so he wasn't being held back. He's also a great speller, loves maths, and he actually loves school and adores learning. He's like a little sponge. Tell him something once and he absorbs it and won't forget. He's got a huge circle of friends and has a better social life than probably most of us in this room. He goes to youth club, after-school sports, swimming, karate, and football. Due to his autism, or perhaps PTEN, I'm not sure, he does lack coordination. We've accepted the fact that he's never going to be the best Pele or Messi, but that's not important to us. It's important that he does things that he enjoys, and lives his life as normally as he can. Our close family members and friends know that Hayden has PTEN syndrome, and we've tried to explain to them what it actually is, but to be honest, all they take from it is that he has a genetic condition that increases his risk of developing other things, cancer, in the future. I personally don't feel that we as a family should dwell on Hayden's PTEN syndrome or his associated autism on a daily basis. They're just a part of what makes him, him. He's so much more than a child with PTEN and autism diagnosis. He's an amazing wee boy. He's unique, he's smart, he's funny, he's incredibly loving, he's super kind to all of his classmates, and he'll be right over there to comfort any of them if he sees they're upset, or he'd offer to play with them if he's seen they were lonely, and for me, this is a bigger part of who he is. Perhaps without PTEN or autism diagnosis, he wouldn't be the same person, and I wouldn't want that. I wouldn't change a single thing about him. However, we still don't dwell on his diagnosis of PTEN syndrome. It's obviously important to us to keep an eye on it. So treatment-wise, again, we feel lucky that all of Hayden's care takes place under the Glasgow Royal Hospital for Children, which is part of the QEUH, Queen Elizabeth University Hospital, which is a brand new state-of-the-art hospital, which is also known as Scotland's Super Hospital. We can literally see the hospital from our front door. Wow, that's awesome, actually. So we never have far to travel for any of Hayden's appointments. At the present time, Hayden is under the care of an endocrinology doctor, lovely guy, Dr. Gufter Seek, I think how I pronounce his name, who he sees once a year to organize a yearly thyroid scan, and this year has started taking some blood, too, to check liver, kidney function, and I'm sure he mentioned vitamin levels, too, etc. That's the first time he's had blood tests done, so we'll see how that goes. Hopefully it'll be normal. I'm sure it will. Hayden used to also see a dermatologist once a year for a skin check, but now we just advise the endocrinologist, Dr. Seek, if we have any concerns, and we can just be referred across to the dermatologist. It was fine when he was younger, having his skin checked from head to toe, but as Hayden gets older, he's 8 next year, we've got to respect his privacy when a female doctor wants to remove his underwear in front of mom and dad and any students in the room to check his skin and nether regions. I feel as a mom that his skin is something that I see on a daily basis, or that I see, his skin is something I can see daily when he's being bathed, etc., so I'm happy to just be referred back to dermatology if needed. What works for one family might not necessarily be what works for another. It's just trying to gauge what you feel is best. Hayden also gets a yearly eyesight test, and then on the same day he has an in-depth look at the back of his eyes by a consultant ophthalmologist. At the moment he has no symptoms as far as we're aware. The only checks he will have until he is much older. Sorry, this is the only checks he will have until he's much older. So this is their experience of healthcare system and professionals. I'm gonna take a drink of water real quick. I feel a little congested. Excuse me. Whew. I know it's not perfect, but I am a huge lover of the NHS system, and I rate it highly, and I think we're extremely lucky to have such a system here in this country, and personally, I can't fault them for the care they've given to us. I'm happy that we've got a relatively quick diagnosis and the referrals to the correct departments for his checks. And even though his checks are yearly, I know that if I have any concerns between those times, one phone call and they'd fit him in as soon as they could before that. So my experience of the medical care we've received is definitely positive. Thoughts for the future? At the moment, I'm happy to take each day as it comes, and I don't spend much time overthinking the future. Of course, I do think about it at times, and probably one of my main concerns is explaining the syndrome and its possible implications to Hayden without causing him too much anxiety or upset. He's already asking questions about why he needs checkups, etc., but I just try to keep it age appropriate for him, telling them that we all have this gene called PTEN, but his works a bit differently. So they just want to check every year to make sure he's healthy. And I think that if I had any advice or tips to give caregivers, especially younger children, would you just be honest with them, keep them informed and up to date, let them be part of and have a say in their care, but keep it age appropriate. Obviously, everyone knows their own kids best, but I feel if you keep them involved and talk through their concerns, etc., then they will probably have less anxieties and worry less. I certainly find this to be true with Hayden anyway. I've also found it useful to keep not only his school, but his class teacher informed of his condition, as well as the issues that come with it, issues that may seem trivial, like his large head size, but we've got to remember that in normal school activities, this can pose problematic and at times embarrassing situations for the kids. For example, in nursery they all had a graduation ceremony and all wore their mortar hats, but Hayden had a ridiculously big one that had been cut out of the back. And whilst I appreciate the effort they went to, I just singled him out in front of the other kids as being different. That does sound really embarrassing. We got away with that as he was only young, but now I try to keep on top of things. Like this year, in the Nativity, he's playing King Herod, and I've already written the teacher explaining that I will provide him with his crown. I don't want them trying on all the crowns they have for the props department in front of all the other kids, only to discover that, surprise, surprise, none of them fit because of the macrocephaly. Hayden now understands that he has a large head, and again, trying to keep it age appropriate for him, I've just told him that it's due to his PTEN syndrome. But how can he have a smaller head when he's so clever? That's cute. He needs a head large enough to hold in his big clever brain. It's just small things like that I try to solve before they become an issue, because no kid wants to stand out for the wrong reasons in school. I know I probably won't always be able to protect him from every single situation that might arise, but if I can, I will. To the newly diagnosed. To anyone who has perhaps been recently diagnosed, the first bit of advice that I would give is don't panic. I know it's easier said than done, but excuse me again. But I wish I could have told myself that when I first received the call. Also, don't go believing everything you read on the internet or blindly Googling things. Of course, go ahead and try to educate and inform yourself. It's a rare disease, and 99% of the time, you'll know more about the condition than the doctors you meet, but make sure your information is taken from reliable sources. Very good advice. Like out PTEN, UKI patient groups, or from proper medical journals. Work with your doctors and consultants. They might not have come across this syndrome often or at all, but give them a chance to learn about it. And at the end of the day, we can't expect them to know everything, but at the end of the day, they will want what's best for their patients too. And if you think that you or your child should be getting something that you are not, ask them for it. For personal experience, I found that our doctors to be more than accommodating. At first, they told us they wouldn't scan Hayden's thyroid until he was in his teens, so it wasn't deemed necessary, but I just asked if they'd please do it for my own peace of mind, and they seemed happy enough to just do it. So, newly diagnosed, don't panic, research your information, work with your doctors, and keep up to date with this group. So that's Hayden's patient journey so far, and we just hope that many more uneventful years ahead, and yearly checkups that quickly all come back showing everything is good. Okay. Yep, and that was, what was her name again? Yeah, that was Yvonne, wow, I know this name, but like reading it, you know, sometimes when you read something it comes across as weird. But that was Yvonne's story about her son Hayden. We learned quite a bit about PTEN from that. Seems like it's congenital, because it is genetic. Let's see some other facts about it. I wonder if there's a YouTube video that we can watch. Okay. So, this video seems to be about the PTEN gene itself, and I'm sure they'll get into the type of cancer that's caused by mutations in the PTEN gene. Let me pause the music really quick. So let's watch this video.
Today we're talking about PTEN, a gene that suppresses tumor growth. When PTEN functions normally, it blocks the growth of certain abnormal cells. When PTEN is changed or mutated, those cells grow and can lead to cancer. If you have a PTEN mutation, you are more likely than most to develop cancer at a young age, and sometimes even multiple cancers, including cancer of the breast, thyroid, kidney, endometrium, colon, or melanoma. Some PTEN mutations are linked with autism and macrocephaly, which means an abnormally large head. If you think you have a PTEN mutation, don't worry. With more frequent cancer screenings, physicians are able to detect cancer early when it can be more easily treated. If you have autism, early interventions may help. If you have a personal or family history of cancer or autism and a large head, talk to your doctor about whether genetic counseling may be right for you.
Okay, so yeah, that was informative. Nice video too. They did a good job on that. Like. Okay, so that's the I've been saying PTEN, but apparently it's pronounced P10, which is way easier. Okay. Let's see what else. Let's explore it a little bit more. There's an anti-bullying page on here. Aw, that's nice. They've got a really nice anti-bullying page here, which I'm going to go ahead and share in the chat. Because why not? Click here if you want to see that. Lots of helpful resources. Okay, let's go back to the hashtag here, see what else we can come across. So we've learned about fibromalar tumors and PTEN gene malformation related tumors.